Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on innovation for impact. We have our world famous speaker, Professor David Smith, Professor Donald, and Professor David J. Kelly. I want to share a good news that World Talent Economy Forum we are developing D Lab Dhaka with the help of 750 Japanese corporations, and we are collaborating with University. So next Friday, 2,000 students from Dhaka, they may join in our conference. Definitely, it will be offline. So thank you, our honorable speaker, those who continuously support World Talent Economy Forum and helping us to grow. First, I would like to request Professor David Smith to share his view about innovation for impact.
Dr. Sharif, thank you for letting me be part of this today. The innovative process is so important today for what we're doing across the world. One of the things we've seen is that over the last decade, really, with the impact of worldwide connectivity, worldwide digitalization, and things, that our ability to innovate has increased, particularly our ability to innovate using group intelligence with teams at a distance. And so what we're seeing is that the ability to impact is enhanced. But the topic today is innovation for impact. And what we've seen is in gatherings like the COP conferences that have been held at the area of things like ESG, of looking at the big changes around the fintech industry and the financial services, and around healthcare in particular. We're beginning to look at how to direct explicit innovation that cannot impact just a product or services, but that can impact activities that are for the greater good. You know, yesterday we talked about some of the environmental impacts and things, and we've seen more and more emphasis of impacting for those type of goods. In the software industry, there's something called a hackathon. And what the hackathon is bringing people together to create new application, new products over an intense, usually a weekend, to innovate for impact on the topic chosen for the hackathon. For example, a hackathon I was involved with about 6, 7 months ago, the hackathon was directed at developing apps for the homeless. And that is a place where the innovation process was directed to see what could be done to help solve some of the homeless problems in areas like that. So this is a trend that we're seeing more and more. A lot of innovation for impact is driven by the differences between the generations. And particularly if you look at the millennials, they are strongly driven by innovation for impact. And so it's a trend that I think is tremendously developing and is going to be a real driver. But I think this is a good initial comment. I'll come back as we hear more, Sharif.
Mhm. Thank you. Now,
Donald, I think you're up.
Yeah, he's frozen or something. Anyway, well, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure what innovation for impact even means. So uh, I don't really know how I can be specific about it. Um, I I was interested to hear what David had to say about it. Uh, I don't really know exactly what I'm going to say, so I'm just going to listen and find out what it could possibly mean.
okay. Mr. David J. Kelly, do you believe that innovation has impact inside any projects, any startup? Example, AGI has any kind of innovations impact or it's add some values for the industry?
Well, sure. I think our innovations will have impact, but I mean, for innovations to, just generally speaking, for innovation to matter, it needs to have impact. Whether it's like the hackathons David mentioned, which I've been involved with in the past as well. Um, is a great way to kind of help foster innovation, especially in emerging technologies of various sorts. Um, but certainly, our intent with the innovations, I mean, that's the whole point of the lab, is to drive that innovation into the market to have impact. If it doesn't have impact, then what's the point, right? Albeit, I mean, I find the term somewhat ambiguous, because it could refer to a lot of different, potential things. But in general, the whole reason we care about innovation is because of the impact that it has.
Mr. David J. Kelly, uh, we know that you are innovating AGI, and right now, uh, Chat GPT playing a major role is become very popular. So, what is the difference in between the features of Chat GPT and your AGI? How does it work? Because we are
Well,
working with young
our
people. Yes.
our AGI, comparing it to ChatGPT 3, you're comparing two different things. ChatGPT is a neural network, trained language model that generates text, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just wonderful that they've made that progress. But like with our current system, you can ask it to write a paper, and it's going to return 15 pages with references that are context specific, where ChatGPT 3 just can't do that. And it's not that our language model is any more sophisticated. It's the cognitive architecture that breaks down problems, creates a graph model of what it's trying to accomplish, and then tries to map out all those relationships and pull that in, and then uses its own language model to connect those ideas into something that translates into English, because it does all its thinking in terms of graphs. And that's how it's able to do like a 15-page paper with references, for example. It's not that our language model is any more sophisticated than ChatGPT.
Mr. Donald, you want to respond?
Well, I don't know. I don't really know anything about his language model. I will make one comment. I think that David Kelly made, that I think is important. If something doesn't have an impact, it's not an innovation, which is why I find that the title of the topic so confusing. If somebody goes and does something that's different and no one else in the world uses it, then it's not really an innovation. I mean, I guess it's innovative to take everything out of the refrigerator that's past its prime and cook it into a cake or something that nobody could possibly eat because it's just garbage. I mean, that's certainly innovative and creative in one respect, but I don't think anybody really call it innovative. I think they just call it kind of crazy. And so all innovations have to have impact, or they're not actually innovations. Hang on. I got to get this.
Professor David J. Kelly, you want to say something about, because Mr. Donald think that your innovation it's actually crazy things.
He thinks that our innovation is crazy.
Maybe I also think that if it's possible
No,
that
I didn't say that at all.
No, 15 pages of scientific write-up with the real research evidence and everything. Yeah, definitely ChatGPT cannot do that. If your AGI can do that, it's definitely very impactful and very interesting things.
It can. It absolutely can. It's been able to do that for about 3 weeks, but it's like it. It's not perfect. You probably need to ride through it, but it'll build 10, 15 pages if you just give it a thesis statement and tell it to write a paper. But it works differently. It's using a language model, but it doesn't use the language model till after it's decided the facts and the details and structured it into a graph and built out that whatever that pattern is of ideas, and then it tries to explain tiny segments and then put the whole thing together as a paper, right? I haven't really gotten it to like write it in like APA format or anything, but it's probably written 10, 15 papers in the past 3 weeks just testing it. Takes about 10 minutes with over 1 million CPUs across the cloud infrastructure that's used to power the thing.
One thing, let's say as World Talent Economy Forum, we are working with many youth. Do you believe that if this kind of advanced AI come, then our young generation lose their intellectual ability? Or
no, I think the biggest benefit, the whole point of the stuff we're building is not to replace humans, but to build super intelligence with humans. It's when you start talking about our most exciting, hopefully, innovation in the next 10 years has to do with collective super intelligence, which anyone can participate in. And that's, whether it's within organizations or countries or like right now, our biggest push is around governance, and we're working with a couple of European governments around collective intelligence and policy analysis and that sort of thing. We certainly don't want to just, we need people. The system works better when people are able to contribute.
Excellent. Mr. Donald, anything you want to add, or still
Sure.
you have confusion about the topic?
Yeah, well, I know people have been using ChatGPT and stuff for like brainstorming and writing comedy. It's really good for comedy because you just take it seriously. There was something in the New York Times the other day that just had me rolling on the floor. A conversation it had with it. It's probably, The Economist had a great line about it. They said that it's utterly confident, well-spoken, and often wrong, just like an economist. I thought that was pretty funny from The Economist. Anyway, I think it's cool what David's doing. It should be interesting to see how he can abstract what he's trying to do into a paper that's accurate and well organized and things like that. It should be interesting, and as it gets to be, I'd love to see the new Bing that's got ChatGTP as a front end, where it has current information. It'd be interesting to see. We could use it to generate ideas for things that you want to do and want to write and things like that. It could be very useful.
Yes, Professor David Smith. Yes.
Well, Sharif, thank you. I've enjoyed the discussion between David, Kelly, and Donald and how it fits. And some of the innovations, I agree with Donald that innovation without a purpose is hard to deal with. But if I look at the topic today and realize that some organizations have put frames around this one, and if I go and, for example, look at what the United Nations has actually defined innovation for impact is, its definition is that the innovation creates significant and lasting impacts by addressing systematic factors underpinning social challenges. And by contrast to them, responsible innovation focused on creating shareholder value. And so that an organization like that has tried to put different definitional spins on this statement. And the innovation for social impact is one which we were talking about earlier and how it can shift. But innovation for impact overall, if I look at all the sectors, I agree strongly with what Donald said, you should, as you begin to look at innovations that have some type of impact, be it a personal impact, an impact on a group of shareholders or stakeholders, impact inside a company, impact on a region, a country, world, that need to begin to look at how those impacts can be used. The other element as we begin to look at this is that the impact is that innovation drives competitiveness and is a mechanism for creating new market spaces. And so if we're looking at the classic impact of innovation, that's a great way to frame it, is that it drives competitiveness. It creates new market spaces. It really handles it. If we go and use the other innovation for impact, it's a form of corporate social innovation that aims at creating a significant social impact. So you have to look at what lenses you're viewing this through, and the lens for understanding and addressing them are different. Some of them are looking at underserved markets. Some of them are looking at how to create new markets. Others, like the social impact, is looking about how to go out and meet a social dysfunction, how to go and meet a place where there's tremendous impacts to society, such as environmental innovation. So these are some of the areas that we really need to understand as we do it, and how to put the pieces in place. But I agree. Innovation to me is the main driver where we're headed today. Be it incremental innovation, distinctive innovation, or breakthrough or disruptive innovation. Each have different processes, each have different elements to do it. But those processes can be used pretty much independently of the type of innovation, the type of impact you're going to try to achieve, whether it's a corporate, individual, social, or whatever. And that, I think, is the criteria we have to apply as we use our lenses and our filters to view this through. It's a complex area for social impact innovation, because I can do it for good or for bad. It's like the comments you see around the use of electric vehicles. So much innovation around electric vehicle has a societal impact, but innovation for electrical vehicles also have a corporate impact. Innovation for electric vehicles also has a regulatory impact and a policy impact. And so you have to kind of look at that broad type of innovation through all those filters. And that's what makes this complex, Dr. Sharif, and one that is a good topic, but it's one that is kind of like a blind man touching the elephant. You're going to have different views of what innovation for impact is depending on what part of the elephant you're touching. So I think that's kind of my framing of this coming back.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Talib, you want to add anything? Dr. Talib Raphael? Mr. Donald?
Well, yeah, David augmented the points that I'm making. I want to say it in a different way, is that you don't get to decide that something's an innovation. It's not really an innovation unless it's accepted by society and used, which is why I'm really making the point that if it doesn't have an impact, it's not an innovation, because it's not a choice you get to make. Same with creativity. It's not your choice. You can say you're being creative, but if everybody else thinks that what you're doing is just nothing, weird, then you'll be forgotten. What you do will be forgotten, and it'll never be used. And if it's forgotten and never used, what kind of an innovation is that? But I'm certainly not saying that anything that we notice isn't an innovation, because if it's something that we notice and it becomes part of something that's affecting us, then it is an innovation. That's what makes it an innovation. So it has to have impact for it to be an innovation. That's just part of the definition of innovation. And so I think that when I go to Finland, they have courses on innovation. And there's at college campuses and around, there's courses on innovation, and people try and teach innovation and basically systemize innovation and come up with systems of innovation. And what they're doing is always incremental innovation, which is fabulous. Incremental innovation is incredibly important, which is when you take something that you're already doing and you figure out a way to do it better, is basically the way that works. And that's incredibly important in manufacturing and software and everything. That taking something and coming up with a way of doing it better is incredibly important. And so when they teach innovation, it's usually about incremental innovation. Disruptive innovation is the kind of innovation where it is something that's completely new and forces people to change the way that they're doing things rather than improve the way that they're doing something. It forces them to do things in a completely new way. And so, obviously when computer word processing came along, it was disruptive, because up until that point, there was people that used typewriters to, and they take their proofs to the printer and they do all these kinds of things. And so there was printers and copy centers and all these kinds of things that were necessary to actually print things. And then, now we all have printers and we can make printed material that's as good looking as something at a publishing company. So there's no use for any of that stuff anymore. So that was disruptive because it completely changed the society. I mean, whole businesses went away. And I mean, that's constantly happening. And AI, what we're thinking about with AI is what kind of disruptions will it be causing? It's definitely something that's going to be disruptive. And we're wondering what kind of jobs are going to be lost? What kind of jobs are going to be created? So sometimes with innovation, we know that it's going to have an impact, but we don't know what impact it's actually going to wind up having. And so I think that's kind of almost more interesting than deciding whether an innovation is impactful or not, because innovations have to be impactful. But the question is, another question is when an innovation is disruptive, what kind of disruption is going to happen, and how is it going to affect us and affect the world around us?
Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly, as you are innovating AGI lab, uh, if you share more interesting story uh, from your lab, maybe it will be helpful for our audience. Next Friday, we have a very, very special conference with 2,000 students. We organize debating workshop, so maybe we can share today's content for them, because they are really interested about AI and capacity of AI, and they will organize some debate on artificial intelligence. So, what you want to share for our audience?
What would I want to share to that audience? I don't know. I think I would have to think about it. I mean, I think David and Don have made a lot of valid points, and innovation doesn't matter. I mean, it's not innovation if it doesn't have some kind of impact.
Usually.
And teaching people to think out of the box, to really do something innovative that has a real impact is kind of a hard problem. That's kind of why I think having the most diverse set of ideas possible allows you to you have a larger potential for creating good ideas that are potentially innovative. AGI Lab is pretty heads down. We've got a goal. We're trying to build out this collective intelligence systems, and that's pretty much it. There's I don't know what other I don't really have huge stories to tell you other than we hit the milestone where it's able to write papers for us, which we think is cool. But and we're potentially working with IBM soon, and that'll be exciting. But I don't know what that really does for that audience. I think the biggest thing is, if you think you have a good idea, go do it. That's probably my one piece of advice is just go do it.
Talib Rafael, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you.
Talib?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Do you want to share some point?
Yeah, I'd rather listen a little bit. I just came in. I'm sorry I'm late.
Okay. Thank you. Professor David Smith.
Well, Sharif, good discussion so far, but let me branch slightly perpendicular to it. Is that when you look at innovation has to create value. And we've talked about the different areas where innovation can create value. But what really sets innovation for impact apart from others is that the part of the value of this is through active learning. And oftentimes innovation is not just sitting back and waiting for inspiration but it's a process of trying to use improving uh, practices, proven knowledge, proven group intelligence to gain insight and to improve fast, to use insights from the innovation process and create the different types of innovations, the incremental, distinctive, and the breakthrough. And active learning really depends on the engagement. Is it something that we can synthesize from what we've been taught? Is it something that we can use because we've seen techniques or others using? Or is it uh, innovation that happens in an environment that's very difficult? For example, innovation that occurs in very complex, very dynamic environments is very different because you have to do that where you have this whole sea of noise and the cognitive dissonance from the sea of noise is high. Where if I'm in more of a classic industry segment that is more static, you do not have as much noise and you can create innovation in a very different way. So, I think there's a couple of different ways we can do it. I love to use group intelligence when I innovate, where I have iterations of it with real-time feedback. Some people call it voice of customers and others, but I think that's a very important part, particularly innovation for impact. You also need to think about different ways to
Thank you,
innovate
Doctor.
based on different type of mental models and their learning styles and how teamwork works and how it works within a complex system, because those complex systems is increasingly what today's world is involved. And there's an approach that I've used trying to do innovation with groups in the past, and particularly with entrepreneurs who are trying to push the envelope and innovate to meet all different types of needs and impacts. And it's called NABC. The N is need. That what you're trying to innovate should fill a significant gap in the market. The A is approach. The offering should meet the needs of your customer, the stakeholders in a unique, compiling, defensible way, and really present an attractive business model for all your shareholders, your stakeholders. The B is benefit relative to cost, and your innovation should really provide superior solutions, superior values, and competition is the C. You need to see what competition is doing, and your innovation should offer considerable more value, more appealing than the alternatives. It should begin to meet more of the care abouts that are involved with the customers there, the users of the innovation. So there's a lot of different ways there, but your mental models, your education, the culture you're living in, uh, all of these impact the different ways you can approach this topic, Sharif, and particularly with the different styles. Dr. Sharif, you've heard me say in the past that there's 6 different ways to view the future. You're an extrapolator, you're a pattern analyst, you're a goal analyst, you're a counterpuncher, you're an intuitor or an artist. Each of those have different views of how I would innovate for impact as well. And each of those have different techniques underneath them that you would apply to your own individual innovation process. And that's why group intelligence is so powerful, because you want to seed your group intelligence with people with each of these 6 different views, so that as you're going through your innovation process for impact, this gives you the complementary and the views that can make an impact more powerful and actually allow you to innovate more quickly with an impact. So I think getting down a little bit more in the weeds and talking about the process and the approaches, that's kind of where I think I can go for this part of it.
Yes. Professor David Smith, I want to share the quotation from Professor APJ Abul Kalam Azad. He was president of uh, India, and he was one of the innovators. So he said in 2014 in a pharmaceutical science fair, an award functions that innovation is a born out of the cultural excellence. This excellence is a process when an individual or a nation contrive to fulfill the dream with calculated risk. So what do you think? Emerging economy has ability to contribute more in research and innovations, like Professor APJ Abul Kalam Azad, or what they have to do, or what does it mean, calculative risk? Professor David Smith.
He seems
Rafael, can you
frozen.
hear me?
We can hear you. I'm not sure if David, the other David, can.
Oh,
Yeah, I think David's.
David Kelly, I thought he was asking you that question.
No,
he's
he's asking you.
Smith.
Oh, sorry. Sharif, can you ask again? David Kelly, can you tell me what he asked again?
It was sort of complicated. He quoted some important person in India talking about how there needs to be a culture of innovation to make the great men that innovate, or something like that.
Oh, I can. There's elements of that I believe with is that you need to have a culture of innovation. Otherwise, you tend to focus on incremental innovation. You know, distinctive innovation and breakthrough disruptive innovation is hard. And particularly when you're beginning to look at distinctive innovation, which is the most impactful of all the types of innovations, the ability to look at processes to create the culture of innovation. You know, for many years, you had the Bell Labs, you had IBM Labs, you had all the large organizations ran focus labs where you brought people together to work in groups to create that culture of innovation. And that's how many of the very dynamic breakthrough innovations we have today happen. But today, with the increased impact of digital tools, where geography no longer refers to a point on a map, but where the competencies and capabilities are required are focused to do what you need to get done, the culture of innovation can now change to a more distributed environment where I take advantage of the different unique capabilities and competencies anywhere in the world. And that it creates a different view of the culture of innovation, I believe, because before it was a group of people coming together, shoulder to shoulder, arm to arm to work. Where today we can do that virtually. Today we can do that in an environment where I can be working 24 hours a day because of using digital technology to transverse across the different time zones, where in the past that was not the case. So, Sharif, I think your quote there is a good one as you look at how it's going, but it's one where I see a lot of changes happening today. You know, just like we see changes happening in education, where it's from setting in a classroom using the Socratic method to teach to where I can do that learning from anywhere in the world in real time using my digital capabilities. That same capability now extends over to innovation.
Thank you. Mr. Donald, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Well, Kelly said two things that I think are critical, which is that you have to have a variety of ideas, and that you have to do things. And I think that fits really importantly with culture, because one of the things that has made Silicon Valley so successful is that it's California's gotten very open to immigrants, and and there's people here from everywhere, and it's been that way for a long time. And so we also have universities which are very tend to be that way as well. And so we have Stanford and Berkeley and some other top tier universities. But one of the important things to understand about innovation is that you have to try a lot of things. And the great one of the greatest composers in the United States was a guy named Duke Ellington, and he wrote some of the most classic songs that you've heard them, everyone's heard them, and he wrote over 3,000 songs, and maybe 50 of them or fewer became classic songs that changed music. But that means he wrote 2,950 songs that people forgotten. And Thomas Edison did the same thing. He said, I remember, his famous quote is he said, "I never failed. I just did 10,000 things that didn't work." You just have to keep trying things to get to the point that you have something that clicks. And that's where culture is incredibly important, because in Silicon Valley and other places, Boston, Austin, various other places that are very, have strong universities and are very open culturally to a variety of different people. They also have a culture of being open to each other and being very sharing. I don't know as much in other places, but I know in Silicon Valley, one of the first things that people ask you is, well, how can I help you? I mean, it's just a very common thing to say. Who can I introduce you to that would help? I know somebody that I could introduce you to that might be able to help you. I mean, it's just, everybody does it. It's just part of what we do. And the other part of that is if you try something and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you tried something that didn't work. So there's people who've gone bankrupt 3 times, and venture capitalists still invest in their companies. So the culture is important in that respect. But I also caution about the idea of thinking about great men, and that innovation is completely because of individuals. Those ideas that David Kelly was talking about, having many ideas, have to come from many people. And so everything that we do because we learn from others, and we borrow ideas from others, and we help each other, and we all know different things. And so that's the other important thing to do, is to kind of realize it's not about every person for themselves and trying to find the great people that do the great things. It's about trying to get everybody to be able to start learning from each other and working together to make things happen. And that's how innovation really happens, is just doing things and not being afraid of doing it, and learning from each other and moving forward.
Thank you. Dr. Talib Rafael, what's your concluding remarks?
Okay, I want to comment on what David and David said. Okay, the culture of wanting to help each other, the culture of wanting to become all part of one is very much prevalent in our part of the world. And it's something that developing countries always encourage because it's the culture of the place. Now, how does that contribute to innovation? I don't know now, because innovation has to come from the West now, not from the East, not from the South, unfortunately. It's the tools that you use to innovate. We're taking the product of innovation as a complete product, as a finished product, and using it. Now, what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is innovation is not something that you could just play with. It's something that has to come from the culture itself. And the culture that I'm talking about here is a culture of wanting to help each other, that's true, but not a culture that can produce much innovation. We are very traditionalist in the way we think, in the way we act, but innovation is contrary to that. I think Silicon Valley has a culture of its own. Now, that's what I wanted to say for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor David Smith, what's your concluding remarks for today's session? Professor David Smith? David, can you hear me?
Dr. Sharif, thank you. Like I said before, I believe this is a very important topic, and one which is applicable for all your various stakeholders. It's very important for your entrepreneurs, for your universities and colleges, for the government, for the commercial companies, and actually, innovation for impact is very important for the citizens as well. Uh, Not only within one region, but globally, because many of our innovations today have to be global. So, very, very important topic for you today and for your constituencies and stakeholders, Sharif. And thank you. I feel very privileged to have been part of the discussion today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye, Sharif.